Good morning. Thank you for joining me today. This morning we'll be in Acts chapter 7, verses 30 through 50. Got you wanting up here? Okay. After 40 years had passed, an angel appeared to him in the desert of Mount Sinai in the flame of a burning bush. When Moses saw it, he was amazed at the sight, and when he approached to investigate, there came the voice of the Lord. I am the God of your forefathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Moses began to tremble and did not dare to look more closely. But the Lord said to him, Take the sandals off your feet, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. I have certainly seen the suffering of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their groaning, and I have come down to rescue them. Now come, I will send you to Egypt. This same Moses they had rejected, saying, Who made you a ruler and a judge? God sent as both ruler and deliverer through the hand of the angel who appeared to him in the bush. This man led them out, performing wonders and miraculous signs in the land of Egypt, at the Red Sea, and in the wilderness for 40 years. This is the Moses who said to the Israelites, God will raise up for you a prophet like me from among your brothers. This is the man who was in the congregation in the wilderness, with the angel who spoke to him at Mount Sinai, and with our ancestors, and he received living oracles to give to you. Our ancestors were unwilling to obey him, but pushed him aside and turned back to Egypt in their hearts, saying to Aaron, Make us gods who will go in front of us. For this Moses who led us out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has happened to him. At the time they made an idol in the form of a calf, brought a sacrifice to the idol, and began rejoicing in the work of their hands. But God turned away from them, and gave them over to worship the host of heaven, as it is written in the book of the prophets. It was not to me that you offered slain animals and sacrifices 40 years in the wilderness, was it, house of Israel? But you took along the tabernacle of Moloch, and the star of the god Rephan, the images you made to worship, but I will deport you beyond Babylon. Our ancestors had the tabernacle of testimony in the wilderness, just as God, who spoke to Moses, ordered him to make it, according to the design he had seen. Our ancestors received possession of it, and brought it with Joshua when they dispossessed the nations that God drove out before our ancestors until the time of David. He found favor with God, and asked that he could find a dwelling place for the house of Jacob. But Solomon built a house for him. Yet the Most High does not live in the houses made by human hands. As the prophet says, Heaven is my throne, and earth is my footstool for my feet. What kind of house will you build for me, says the Lord? Or what is my resting place? Did my hand not make all these things? Yeah. So, Stephen, in continuing his defense in front of the Council of the Jews here, talks about Moses, about how he went on top of Mount Sinai and had the burning bush appear to him, and how he went to Egypt and tried to lead the people of Israel out, but nevertheless they retained a desire to be back in Egypt in their hearts, and rejected him as judge, when they were really rejecting God. And rather than listen to him, they told Aaron to make gods to go in front of them, thereby rejecting the God that had led them out of Egypt. And during their time in the wilderness, they also offered burnt offerings and sacrifices to Moloch, who was one of the detestable gods who required child sacrifice. And Rephan here, who I know less about, but these were Canaanite deities, gods of the local land. which I guess to me highlights that they had the tabernacle with them. They had this physical representation of God's presence in their midst. And despite that, they rejected God and chose to worship other gods instead. So, too, the Jews here in the Jewish council have a physical representation of God's presence with them, that is the temple of the Lord. But they reject the God who ordered all these things, that is Jesus. So, relevant. What I'm saying is that Stephen's speech is relevant to what the Jews are doing now, essentially. And in line with what their ancestors did as well. That is, you have God leading the people out of the old and into the new here, into something better and greater, but them rejecting it and clinging to slavery. Yeah. And Stephen also points out when Solomon built a house for God, that the prophet says, "Heaven is my throne and earth is my footstool for my feet. What kind of house will you build for me, says the Lord? Or what is my resting place? Did my hands not make all these things?" Envisioning the God of the Old Testament, Yahweh, as one of these Canaanite deities who lives and breathes and works out of some sort of human temple is incorrect. God is bigger than the whole universe, frankly. And it's foolish to think that a small earthly dwelling place like the temple could contain him, or that he would be bound to a place like the temple. Anywho, let's see what Guzik has to say. An angel of the Lord appeared to him in the wilderness of Mount Sinai. Stephen again emphasized one of the main points of his reply to the council, that God, his glory, and his work was not confined to the temple. God appeared to Moses in the wilderness before there ever was a temple. "I will send you to Egypt." Stephen emphasized that God both called and commissioned Moses. This Moses whom they rejected. Even though Israel had rejected Moses and his leadership, God appointed Moses with unmistakable signs, including the burning bush in the wilderness. He brought them out. Though Israel rejected Moses at what might be called his first coming, he still remained God's chosen deliverer for Israel. Yeah. This is what Moses who said to the children of Israel. This is that Moses who said to the children of Israel, Moses promised that there would come after him another prophet, and warned that Israel should take special care to listen to this coming prophet. But just like Israel rejected Moses, so they were rejecting Jesus, who is the prophet Moses spoke of. Each individual should consider for themselves how they should accept Jesus and not reject him. They should receive him as their deliverer, the one who can rescue. Yeah, and this is another common thing with, at least Islam in particular, is that they will take that portion out of Deuteronomy saying that another prophet is coming after me and apply it to Muhammad rather than Jesus. But Stephen here is clearly applying it to Jesus. This is he who was in the congregation, who received the living oracles. Moses, like Jesus, led the congregation of God's people, enjoyed special intimacy with God, and brought forth the revelation of God. They made a calf in those days, and rejoiced in the works of their own hands. When ancient Israel rejected Moses and God's work through him, they replaced him with their own man-made religion. Stephen applied the same idea to the council he spoke to. The phrase, "and rejoiced in the work of their own hands is especially meaningful. One of the accusations against Stephen was that he blasphemed the temple. It wasn't that Stephen spoke against the temple, but against the way Israel worshipped the temple of God instead of the God of the temple. Just as Israel worshipped the calf in the wilderness, so too now they are worshipping the works of their own hands, that is, the temple. Then God turned and gave them up to worship the host of heaven, in their rejection of Moses and the God who sent him. Israel turned instead to corrupt idols, bringing upon themselves the judgment described in the passage quoted from Amos 5:25 through 27. Stephen took the passage from Amos and changed it slightly to bring the point to his listeners. Amos said beyond Damascus, but Stephen changed it to beyond Babylon. Boise explains Stephen, who quotes the text, alters it because he's not talking to the people of the northern kingdom, but to the leaders of Israel in the south. It is their history that he has in mind. God turned and gave them up to worship the host of heaven. The idea here is both important and awesome. Paul later built on the thought of God giving man over to his sinful desires in Romans. It makes each of us consider the question, if we reject Jesus, what will we be given up to? Our fathers had the tabernacle. Solomon built him a house. Stephen's point was that the presence of the tabernacle, or the temple, did not keep them from rejecting God and his special messengers. However, the Most High does not dwell in temples made with human hands. Stephen confronted their idolatry of the temple. In doing so, they tried to confine God within the temple, yet God is too big to fit in any temple man could make. On a more subtle level, many Christians do the same thing. It may not be the worship of a church building, though certainly that does take place from time to time, but it is the confinement of God to one place. In other words, the only place they meet God is at the church. As far as they are concerned, God is absent from the rest of their lives. In the minds and lives of some today, God might as well only live at the church. Yeah, that's not a good place to be in, where our supposed devotion to God only plays itself out for 1 hour a week inside of a church building. Rather, if we truly call him Lord, Master of our lives, then that devotion to him should permeate our whole lives and not just that 1 hour. Okay, carrying on. Psalm 128, verses 1 through 6. How blessed is everyone of the Lord's loyal followers, each one who keeps his commands. You will eat what you worked so hard to grow. You will be blessed and secure. Your wife will be like a fruitful vine in the inner rooms of your house. Your children will be like olive branches as they sit all around your table. Yes, indeed, the man who fears the Lord will be blessed in this way. May the Lord bless you from Zion, that you might see Jerusalem prosper all the days of your life, and that you might see your grandchildren. May Israel experience peace. From Guzik here. The blessed family of those who fear the Lord. The psalm is titled A Song of Ascents. It is another of the 15 songs sung by travelers on their way to Jerusalem, usually for one of the 3 yearly feasts, Passover, Pentecost, and Tabernacles. Like Psalm 127, it has a focus on God's work in and through the family. It is of real significance that these songs of home and of true civic consciousness are found among those which are sung on the way that leads to worship. It is ever good to carry into the place of our communion with God the interests of home and city. It is only by doing so that we can influence these for their lasting good. From G. Campbell Morgan. Blessed is everyone who fears the Lord. The proper honor and respect the creature owes to the Creator is described as the beginning of wisdom. In many places, Psalm 111 verse 10, Job 28:28, Proverbs 1:7 and 9:10, and Ecclesiastes 12 verse 13. It is to be expected that such wise living brings a blessing. From Horn, blessed above all the sons of men, and the author of blessing to them all, was the man Christ Jesus, because above them all, and for them all, He feared, he loved, and he obeyed. Blessed is everyone. This blessing is available to all who will honor and respect God. It isn't dependent on race, class, education, or even intelligence. Happiness belongs not to the rich, the powerful, and the prosperous as such, but in every state and condition, blessed is the man that fears Jehovah. From Horn. Who walks in his ways. This explains what the psalmist meant by the fear of the Lord. It wasn't fundamentally a matter of having certain feelings toward God, but a matter of a life of obedience. The deepest and central truth concerning him is that he fears Jehovah. The reality of that fear is seen in that he walks in the ways of Jehovah. Such a man is indeed blessed, that is, happy, in the truest sense of that word. From Morgan. It is idle to talk of fearing the Lord if we act like those who have no care whether there be a God or no. God's ways will be our ways if we have a sincere reverence for him. If the heart is joined unto God, the feet will follow hard after him. From Spurgeon. When you eat the labor of your hands, you shall be happy. The psalmist had in mind the hard-working farmer who enjoys the food of his own work. Though an element of work is cursed since Adam's time, at least a portion of this curse is taken away for the one who fears the Lord. Thy labor shall not be vain and fruitless, and the fruit of thy labor shall not be taken away from thee, and possessed by others, as God threatened to the disobedient, but enjoyed by thyself with comfort and satisfaction. From Poole. That is, thou shalt reap, and receive the sweet of thy sweat, whether it be of the brow or of the brain, according to the kind of thy calling. From Trapp. Your wife shall be like a fruitful vine. The one who fears the Lord may be blessed with a large, happy home. The home is happy in its very heart, and the children flourish as they gather all around your table. There is a sense of community and happiness. The vine was a symbol not only of fruitfulness, here explicitly so, but of sexual charm and of festivity. Though the idea of bearing children is found in the figure of the fruitful vine, it goes far beyond it. Good wives are also fruitful in kindness, thrift, helpfulness, and affection. If they bear no children, they are by no means barren if they yield us the wine of consolation and the clusters of comfort. From Spurgeon. Christianity brought in the idea that singleness is also a calling of God, and that in some cases to be preferred over being married. Jesus was single. Like a fruitful vine, like olive plants, there were two important crops in ancient Israel. The grapes and wine from the fruitful vine, and the oil from the olive plants were not necessities for survival, but they made life so much better. A happy marriage and flourishing children are not essential for survival, but greatly enrich life in their own way. The vine and the olive are two of the best fruits, both together implying that a great part of man's temporal happiness consisteth in having a good wife and children. From Trapp. Though the olive tree may not bear after it had been planted for 40 years, it is a symbol of longevity and productivity. So are children within the household of faith. They are not like grass, which is here today, but is gone tomorrow. Rather, they are olive trees that in due time bear their fruit. From Van Gemeren. The interesting thing about these two images, vines and olive plants, is that they are biblical symbols of the abundant life. They are not food staples like wheat or corn. They symbolize rich blessing. From Boise. Thus shall the man be blessed. As stated before in verse 1, there is assurance of blessing for all who honor and respect God the way that they should. We recognize that some people have genuinely feared the Lord, yet have not enjoyed all of the specific blessings described in verses 2 and 3. This is because the psalmist wrote this as his desired blessing for those who fear the Lord. This is because they are general descriptions of the blessed life in ancient Israel, and not universal promises to the people of God. This is because they are not the only blessings of life, and God may give other blessings in compensation to those who fear the Lord. And this is because none of us perfectly fears the Lord. From Horn, if temporal blessings be granted him, he accepteth them as shadows of those which are eternal. If they are denied, He remembers that they are only shadows, and are therefore denied, that he may fix his thoughts and affections more firmly on the substance, that is, the eternal reality, rather than the temporary. Who fears the Lord? This is a further condition upon these general promises. The honor and respect that the creature owes the Creator is essential. The Lord bless you out of Zion. As another of the Song of Ascents, it is natural for the singers of this psalm to think about the connection of blessing with Jerusalem. God has good for his people that will come out of Zion. When we consider that much of the teaching and ministry Jesus did was in Jerusalem, we see that we are blessed out of Zion. When we consider that Jesus died as a sacrifice and a substitute for our sins in Jerusalem, we see that we are blessed out of Zion. When we consider that Jesus rose from the dead and ascended to heaven from Jerusalem, we see that we are blessed out of Zion. When we consider that the gospel was first preached out of Jerusalem and the church was birthed there, we see that we are blessed out of Zion. May you see the good of Jerusalem. For the one who fears the Lord, it is a blessing for him to see the good of Jerusalem. It shows that there is a sense in which a happy home is not enough. We must also have care for our community and nation. Blended with the sweet domesticity of the psalm is glowing love for Zion. However blessed the home, it is not to weaken the sense of belonging to the nation. From Maclaren. Instead, strong and happy homes are for the good of a city. The strength of any city lies in its strong family life. The true strength of the family issues from its ordering in the fear of the Lord. From Morgan. May you see your children's children. The blessing to the one who fears the Lord goes beyond the holy city and impacts the holy family. The psalmist sees the blessing as enjoying grandchildren. Since the pilgrims' journeys to Israel were often made as families, it made sense for there to be much attention given to family relations in the Songs of Ascents. Peace be upon Israel. The psalm ends with this happy and confident declaration. The psalmist understood that if the people of Israel did fear the Lord, this blessing of shalom would be evident in their community, in their family, and in the kingdom as a whole. From Maclaren, this ancient singer had a true conception of the obligations flowing from personal and domestic blessings. He teaches us that it is not enough to see children's children unless we have eyes to look to the prosperity of Jerusalem, and tongues which pray not only for those in our homes, but for peace upon Israel. And finally, Proverbs chapter 6, verses 31 through 33. Gray hair is like a crown of glory. It is attained in the path of righteousness. Better to be slow to anger than to be a mighty warrior, and one who controls his temper is better than one who captures a city. The dice are thrown into the lap, but their every decision is from the Lord. I think it helps as well to say that Proverbs is a book of generalities, in that, in general, wise living results in abundance, that wickedness results in destruction, and that living a good life, living in wisdom leads to a long life. Of course, this is not true in every situation, but in general, things like verse 31 are true. Gray hair is like a crown of glory. It is attained in the path of righteousness. That is, oftentimes, men of anger and bloodshed and violence are cut down earlier in their life and don't attain gray hair, or die perhaps in some other way of having uncontrolled passions and getting some problem with their body and dying before their prime type thing. And so gray hair is a sign of having gone down the path of righteousness, in general. Better to be slow to anger than to be a mighty warrior, and one who controls his temper is better than one who captures a city. Yeah, there's other proverbs that speak of the folly of anger. That is, anger resides in the bosom of fools type thing. And an interesting one, the dice are thrown into the lap, but their every decision is from the Lord. Things might seem random, and we might look at what we perceive to be random results, but ultimately God is in control of everything. And even things like random number generation. Let's see what Guzik has to say. The silver-haired head is a crown of glory. The cultural setting of its time, there was nothing unusual about this statement. Ancient cultures were sensible enough to honor and value the wisdom and experience of old age. They saw the white hair of the elderly as a crown of glory. It is found in the way of righteousness. This is a helpful and necessary follow-up statement to the first line of the proverb. It isn't age itself that brings a crown of glory to a person, but age in the way of righteousness. The sad truth is that age itself does not make all people better, and certainly not godlier. There is something commendable about old age that can remember a long walk with God through life and can anticipate unbroken fellowship with Him in glory. From Ross. He who is slow to anger is better than the mighty. There is someone better than the mighty man who can defeat many others in the field of combat. It is the man or woman who has control over his own anger, who can, when it is wise and necessary, be slow to anger. There have been many kings who had conquered nations and yet were slaves to their own passions. Alexander, who conquered the world, was a slave to intemperate anger, and in a fit of it slew Cletus, the best and most intimate of all his friends, and one whom he loved beyond all others. From Clark. And he who rules a spirit than he who takes a city. Under God's wisdom and strength, to rule one's own spirit is a greater accomplishment than to conquer a city. Some who can conquer cities should first be concerned with conquering self. Trap. How much better Valentinian, the emperor, who said upon his deathbed that among all his victories one only comforted him, and being asked what that was, he answered, "I have overcome my worst enemy, mine own naughty heart." The lot is cast into the lap. This was something similar to the rolling of the dice. To cast the lots was to use some tool of chance to make a choice. The lot was used to divide the land of Israel among the tribes, and to arrange the workers for the temple. The disciples used lots to fill the vacancy left by Judas. Its every decision is from the Lord. The idea is not that every single event in life is a message from God, nor is it that we should use games of chance to determine God's will. To cast the lot was a way to commit this decision to God, and when we commit our decisions to Him, God guides us. The Old Testament uses the word lots. The use of the word lot shows that this proverb, in Proverbs 18:18, is not about God's control of all random occurrences, but about His setting of matters properly referred to Him. From Kidner. Waltz connects Proverbs 16:33 back to 16:32. Ultimately, the Lord, not the disciples' self-possession alone, rules his destiny, as illustrated by the lot. Yeah. Anyhow, thank you so much for joining me today. Hope you have a great day. Bye.